Entrepreneurship, as well as the Ideas Club. So it's my pleasure to introduce Ankurs Warikoo. He is an entrepreneur, a teacher, a content creator, and a mentor based in India. He founded nearby.com in 2015 and was the CEO until 2019. Prior to that, he was the founding CEO of Groupon's India business from 2011 to 2015. Ankur is a digital educator and conducts courses on entrepreneurship, career management, and personal growth. Over 80,000 students have attended his courses so far. He loves spending time with first-time entrepreneurs, hoping he can help them not make the same mistakes he made when he started. Besides being a teacher in his popular courses, Ankur is also known as a public speaker and social media influencer with over 4 million followers across LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube. It is my pleasure to introduce Ankurs Warikoo. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much, Dan. Thanks for the very warm introduction. It's a pleasure to be amongst all of you. I hope all of you are doing well and had a lovely Thanksgiving break and all set for the winter break that's upon us now. And I hope all of you are doing well in your semester as well. Thanks for joining in and sparing your time today. When Varanya approached me and we got talking, and then Anu also suggested a few topics to share on, while all of you are students of entrepreneurship in a lot of respects, and I've been an entrepreneur for the last decade, I've always felt, and this is the biggest realization I've had, that while entrepreneurship is a profession and something that's actively spoken about, especially in today's world, it's largely a mindset. And I wanted to talk to all of you today about the entrepreneurial mindset. The biggest thing that I've realized is for you to be an entrepreneur does not mean for you to start up, does not mean for you to own equity, does not necessarily mean that you started something and then built it to a certain level, was the founder, CEO, and so on. You could very well be an entrepreneur even while working for someone. You could very well be an entrepreneur in your life, in your perspectives, in your relationships. And there is a certain trait, a certain mindset that gets you to think like an entrepreneur, behave like one, act like one, which is what I wanted to share with all of you. The way that I will do that is through the only way that I know. I will share my life story. It's been a fascinating life. I've had a lot of joy living my life so far, and I'd love to share that with you. Through that, leave you with these 3 lessons and these 3 takeaways that I believe define the trait of an entrepreneurial mind. So I'll take you back all the way to school. I was one of those rare kids in school who very early on knew exactly what I wanted to do in life. I was absolutely clear how my life would turn out to be. I was very well prepared for what lay ahead, and I had a 3-step plan towards my life. Step 1 was to go to the US to get a PhD degree and become a scientist. Step 2 was to join NASA as a space scientist. And step 3 was to become the first man on Mars as a space scientist. This is before Elon Musk had come into the picture, so I've not been polluted by any Mars exuberance that we see today. This is like 2000s, 1990s, and growing up in India as a middle-class family, this was the absolute holy grail of ambition that one would have, which is to go to the US. I would be the first one in my entire family, extended, that would step out of the country to go outside. And that was what I wanted to do, become a space scientist. And if you are a space scientist, then the best place to work at that point of time was NASA. And if you are a NASA space scientist, then the holy grail for you and the absolute pinnacle is to go to Mars and eventually settle there. So everything that I was doing, every step, every action, every plan, every thought of my life was centered towards these 3 steps and these 3 goals. And I took up science in class 11th and 12th. In the Indian education system, you have to decide a certain stream that you are going to specialize in. And science was what I was good at. Science was what I wanted to pursue. Science was what I had to become a space scientist. And after my school, I joined Delhi University, which is where I come from, as part of its bachelor's in physics program for a 3-year period. And that frankly wasn't that great an academic experience. There's very little that you get out of being a student in Delhi University generally. The only thing, frankly, I got out of college was my wife. So I'm glad that I went to college. It wasn't for that reason, but I was just lucky that I found my life partner there, and we've continued to be so. But no distractions. goal was really clear: start applying to the US universities for the PhD program. And I started to do that after my bachelor's. And of all the applications that I made through, I got through Michigan State University for its PhD program in astrophysics on a 100% scholarship, which was the only way, frankly, I could have afforded an American education. We come from a very humble background, hand-to-mouth existence, never had enough savings. And it was absolutely impossible for anyone to imagine that a US education could be sponsored by what the financial wherewithal we had. So the scholarship was the only way that it could be afforded. And I'm so glad that I got that. And the next thing I know, I'm in the US as a student trained in the Indian education system. And the thing about the Indian education system, in case you do not know, is that it trains you impeccably well to know when to study, how much to study, whether to study, what to study, to crack this exam code that happens at the end of the semester, for you to be absolutely nailing the rank that you need to get in the class. And I was deploying 18 years of my training in school and college to that best effect. I was absolutely immaculate when it came to cracking the exam code and to get that end semester result the way that I desired. And I was now suddenly top of my class. I was on this fast track program to complete the PhD. My professors loved me. My students hated me. It was everything that I'd imagined would be happening to me, except there was something that was missing. And the way that I know that there was something missing is because we always know when something is missing. We always know when something is missing. We may not want to admit it. We may not want to come to terms with it, but we always know when something is missing. And I was very clearly experiencing that. While I was doing what I was doing, while I was absolutely killing it, it was exactly how I'd imagined it to be. The hum, the buzz, the vibe that you think you would have felt had you been doing that was just not there. And I began to have these very tough conversations with myself. What's wrong? This is what you wanted to do. This is where you wanted to be. This is exactly how you'd planned it. What is potentially going wrong? And I realized after a series of these rather hard conversations with my own self that physics was something that I was good at, but it didn't make me happy. Physics was something that I was good at, but it didn't make me happy. And for the first time in my life, it struck me that what you're good at and what makes you happy could be two entirely different things. And that was a big revelation for me, because all my life I had been trained and taught that if you're good at something, you automatically become happy doing it. And that nearly wasn't the case with me. Here I was doing something that I was good at, excelling it, but it just felt like this wasn't for me anymore. And at that point of time, I had two choices to make in life. Choice one was continue with whatever I was doing. And because I was good at it, I would get all the socially desirable outcomes, success as society calls it. But it's quite likely that I will not be happy in my life doing that. Or number two, pursue whatever is it that happiness meant, not knowing what it was for me, but it just meant that what I was doing was not the thing that's going to make me happy. So I had to hunt for something else. And at that point of time, I decided to drop out of my PhD and come back to India. And you can imagine how that conversation went with my parents. Indian parents, in case you have no idea who they are absolutely paranoid when it comes to education. They would just lose their shit if their kids are thinking of dropping out. And this is not dropping out as of today. Today, when I go and speak on forums and say I dropped out of my PhD, people are like, oh my God, every successful person we know has dropped out of something, so you must be really cool. But back then in 2004, dropping out of education, especially for an Indian kid, just meant that you most likely flunked the examinations. You didn't do well and your university threw you out. There was no other legit reason for anyone to be dropping out of an education, least of all in the manner that I was. And my parents were like, this doesn't make sense. It just doesn't make sense. You are making the biggest mistake of your life. And we don't get it. We don't buy this bullshit theory of, oh, I'm good with this, but I'm not happy, whatever that meant. And it took a fair bit of convincing, but I'm so glad I didn't listen to my parents. I had the moral courage to drop out of PhD, come back to India. And at the age of 24, I'm now absolutely clueless. I have no goal, no direction, no idea what I should be doing in life. I have no sense of what are the opportunities ahead of me. We come from a very humble background, as I mentioned, so it wasn't that something was waiting for me. It wasn't like there was a job or a family business to take care of. My dad, incidentally, had started his own business after having worked for 40 years. That hadn't gone so well. We were in financial debt, so it was like a financial crisis, and some things just had to work and work really fast for us to make sense as a family and for me to make sense as an individual. And I was confused, and my friends were like, "You're confused, my friend. So why don't you do what most confused people do? Go get an MBA." And I had a lot of my friends who had gone for an MBA degree, and those were those 2 years of commitment, time and money and effort and so on. And I wasn't sure of whether that would be the right thing for me. And serendipitously, as luck would have it, I come across this rather young school. It's a 5-year-old school. It's an insanely expensive program by Indian standards. But the good thing about the school was it's a 1-year program. So that's fascinating. I wouldn't have to spend 2 years in figuring whether that worked for me or not. And it was a bunch of work experience people that would be part of the class, which, by the way, is not the trend in India, at least wasn't back then. Back then, if you went to business school, you most likely were just amongst people who were just coming into business school right after college. And here it was a school which was just a 1-year program, and you'd be in the middle of people who had actually done real shit in life. And that was necessary for me because I had zero perspective about the real world. I knew nothing about the real world. I knew nothing about sales and finance and marketing and IT and strategy and HR and supply chain and whatnot. My entire worldview was just limited to science and physics, and that's all that I knew about the world. So for me to be spending time with people who were so dramatically different from me and my experience so far was the best learning playground that I could have imagined for myself. So I applied to this business school called the Indian School of Business, and I thankfully got through. And that 1 year just fundamentally changed my life. It just absolutely altered my life. And I think the big reason was because while I went to ISB looking for a job or a career and a title and a brand and a company and a function and all those nice things, the biggest reason I went to ISB was looking for myself. Who am I? What am I good at? What am I not good at? What are the things that I should be doing, should not be doing in life? And I needed answers to these questions, and ISB became my experimentation lab to get answers to these questions. During the course of finding these answers, I also realized while at business school that there's this fancy thing called consulting. And consulting is this really cool profession where you work with really smart people on real life business problems across industries in a crunched period of time. And I felt that that was a great profession to pursue because, remember, I had zero perspective in life. So for me to be just throwing myself into the vast ocean and getting as much to learn in the shortest period of time was the best thing that I could sign up for. So I started preparing for consulting jobs, and I got through a consulting firm. And the next thing I know, as a 26-year-old, I am sitting in the boardrooms of really large companies, facing people whose faces I've seen on the covers of newspapers and magazines, telling them on how they should be running their business, basis the Excel sheet that I have made, basis my understanding of their business, of which I had no idea until 3 weeks back. And I was like, how does this make sense? Why aren't you throwing me out of this room? I'm 26 years of age. You have worked in this company for longer than I've lived on this planet. This relationship, my friend, is not an equal one. But they weren't throwing me out. And if they weren't throwing me out, I was getting to learn a lot at their expense. And I had a ball of a time in consulting. It's such a great profession. And I did that for another 1.5 years. And then after these 1.5 years, I'm one fine evening catching up with a friend of mine from business school. And he's like, hey, I've started this new website and I wanted to tell you about it. I said, sure, what's it called? And he said, it's called secondshadi.com. Shadi is the Hindi word for marriage. And I was like, secondmarriage.com. Is that what I think it is? And he's like, yeah, man, it's a matrimonial website for people to get married again. There are so many people in India who get married, so they're bound to be people who get divorced and widowed. And this is just a platform for them to seek their second partner. And I was like, that is such a great idea. How did you think about that? And he's like, no, my dad thought about this. And my first reaction was, well, I hope uncle and auntie are having a happy marriage. But more importantly, is there a way that I can help? And he was like, yeah, I'm a coder, I'm a software engineer, so I will build this thing out. But I think that you can be a great partner given your expertise in marketing and just in content and operations. So I feel that we can make a great team. And would you want to work with me? And I was like, look, man, I'm having such a ball of a time in consulting. I am, for the first time in my life, learning something. For the first time in my life, I'm making money. And I think it'll be foolish of me to just give all of that away and join you as yet. But if you're okay, and I really hope that you're okay, is it fine if I work with you with whatever time is left out of consulting and just see where it goes? And he was very gracious. He said, sure, let's do that. So for the next 1.5 years, I had a day job as a consultant. During nighttime, I was Batman trying to get people married again in India. And that was a fun thing to do. It became far bigger than we imagined it to be. And it now warranted my full-time attention. So I then decided after 3 years of consulting to quit consulting, take a 80% pay cut down to the bare minimum financial amount that I needed to survive and join secondmarriage.com. And you can imagine how that conversation went with my parents. They're like, what is seriously wrong with you? Why do you every 4 or 5 years keep inflicting this pain? Forget on yourself. Why do you keep inflicting it on us? You're not even married the first time yourself. Like, you have no idea what marriage is all about. And here you're trying to get people married again, leaving all that thing that you get in consulting, the money, the reputation, the respect. How does this make sense? And I was like, this makes sense to me because I think I can always go back to the world that I've come from. I think if it were to be, I can always go back to consulting. But I don't know if this opportunity that lies ahead of me is ever going to happen again in my life. And I don't want to be living that with regret. They didn't get it. I totally get why they didn't get it. But again, I didn't listen to my parents. Next thing I know, I joined secondmarriage.com and we have a great time. We built several other websites, one of which was a car classifieds website that very quickly became one of India's top car classifieds websites. And we were able to sell that very quickly in about 1.5 years to a group in South Africa, made a little bit of money. There were 3 founders. We went our ways. And at that point of time, I got in touch with Groupon. And Groupon had just started in 2008 in Chicago. And at that point of time, it was the thing in the US. Like, it was spreading like wildfire. It was all across. People were just eyeing. And at that point of time, they were setting up offices all across the world, and they were looking for people to start their businesses internationally, India being one of them. And I got in touch with them. They liked me. I liked them. And the next thing I know, I was setting up the Groupon India business for Groupon in 2011. Did that for a couple of years and became the Groupon APAC GM for another couple of years. And then by 2015, it was time for that 4 to 5 year itch to happen again in my life. And at that point of time, I realized that Groupon as a publicly listed company had its own problems to take care of in US and Europe, which were meaningfully large because these were the 2 largest markets for it. So the kind of attention that they could spend on a country like India was limited, understandably so. But I was living the India opportunity day in and day out. I saw what a massive market it was, and I felt that we were underserving that opportunity significantly. So I went to Groupon Global and made a very audacious ask. I told them I want to buy the Groupon India business from you and I want to make it independent. And they were like, what are you talking about? You're a 100% subsidiary of a publicly listed company listed in the US. This thing has never happened before. And I'm like, yeah, I know this hasn't happened before, but there's a reason why I think it should happen now. And it took about 9 months of convincing, back and forth, and a lot of conversations. But we were able to pull that off. We partnered with Sequoia Capital. which is one of the world's most respected VC firms. And we bought the majority shareholding of Groupon from Groupon's India business and made it into an independent entity that today is called Nearby.com. And Nearby.com is today a local commerce destination. It is the top platform in India for everything local, just the way that you would imagine Groupon to be, but far more relevant version of it specific to the Indian context. And in 2017, after 2 years of Nearby, Paytm, which is one of the largest e-commerce companies in India, they came along, they were interested in the business, and they made an investment because of which it became a Paytm company. And in 2019, after 4 years of running Nearby, it became profitable. And at that point of time, I felt that I had done my work. I had managed to also build a really solid team that I completely trusted. And I then decided to then step down as the CEO of Nearby, take a 3-month break, trying to figure out what I wanted to do in life. And I am on the 23rd month of that 3-month break, still trying to figure what I want to do in life. And the reason why I love this story is not because it's my life. I would love it, frankly, if anyone were to share the story as their life, because it's just a fascinating story. This has so many ups and downs, so many left and right turns, so many U-turns, but it leaves me with a very powerful lesson, which is the first thing that I want to share with all of you. We are told that in order to win in life, you got to have a plan. We're told that the most important ingredient towards success is to have a plan. Got to have a plan, got to have a plan. And I had a plan. I had a plan as good as a plan could get. I had a plan for my life, which was very well laid out, which was immaculately played, I was doing well on it. I was executing on it. Everything that you would call a good plan was part of my plan. And yet, life punched me hard in my face, mocked me, laughed at me, said, "You think you have a plan? Well, I have a plan for you, and I want to see how you react to that plan." So when I came back from India after dropping out of I came back from the US after dropping out of my PhD, I had 2 choices in life. Choice 1 was plan A didn't work, so plan B. Plan B doesn't work, plan C. Plan C doesn't work, plan D. Because you always got to have a plan. That's what the world tells you. Got to have a plan. Or option 2. Is it even possible to live life without a plan? Is it possible to live life without goals and targets? As crazy as it sounds, is it even possible to live life without goals and targets? And if it is, then how so? How does one go about living life without goals and targets? And I needed to answer this question for myself, because the truth was, I didn't have any basis to come up with another plan. I had zero foundation, because I thought that everything that was required as part of a great plan, I had done that as part of my first plan. And even that didn't work. So if that didn't work, what hope in hell do I have to come up with another plan and hope that that would work? Frankly, nothing. So I didn't want to commit myself to another plan, another goal, another target that I set for myself and my life. What I wanted to do instead was find if there was a way of living life without them. And I embarked on that journey. And I embarked on that journey when I went to ISB for my business school education. And ever since then, for the last 16 years, I've been living my life on 3 fundamental principles that I've come to realize define what I call the entrepreneurial mindset. A mindset that is not necessarily committed to goals and plans, instead to something far bigger and far more consistent. And let me start with those 3 lessons and then give you that one thing that it rests on. Go back to the first day of your university. Go back to the first day of you maybe joining high school. Go back to the first day when you were amongst a set of people who were as diverse as you are within right now. And what invariably happens, this is the human tendency, this is the basic instinct that we all have, is that within hours, within days, within weeks, we're trying to look for people who are like us. We're trying to hunt for people who are similar to us. We're trying to form a community, a tribe of people where we feel we belong. And that's what's going to happen. We will have, I saw that at ISB, I saw that at business school. Instantly, within the first day, the first week, and you may have seen that as well, You had groups formed. There were engineers hanging out with engineers, and nationalities hanging out with nationalities, and people who love dance hanging out with people who love dance, and people who love public speaking hanging out with public speaking, people who were commerce grads hanging out with commerce grads. They were just forming these communities, these tribes where they felt that they belonged. And that's because we don't want our worldviews to be challenged. We don't want our ideologies to be threatened. We don't want to be amongst people where we're constantly in conflict with how we see the world. But I realize that that's the wrong way to approach how you would want to look at life. If I am in the middle of a very diverse group, as diverse as all of you are right now amongst yourselves, it becomes my responsibility to spend time with people who are nothing like me, because that's when I get to know something new about the world that I didn't. You are never going to learn anything new from someone who agrees with you. You're never going to learn anything new from someone who agrees with you. And the only way that you form a new perspective, a fresh perspective, you have a different take on something that you've seen all your life and yet couldn't see how different it could be, is for you to spend time with someone who's very different from you. But we don't do that. We box ourselves. We fix ourselves into that community, that tribe where we want to belong, and we never go out and venture out. I'm not suggesting do that so that you agree with them. I'm not suggesting you do that so that you become them. I'm suggesting you do that so you become aware of the perspectives that lie outside of the one that you formed for yourself through your own experience. Spend time with people who are nothing like you so that you know something about the world that you didn't so far. They know something that you don't. And if you spend time with them, you're only going to make yourself richer in what you know. Number two, I will take you back to this company that we all know of, Google. And Google is a fascinating company. It's widely recognized as one of the best places to work. And one thing about the Google offices across the world is this really fancy thing called their free lunch. They offer the most magnificent free lunch to all their employees at all points of time. And I've had the joy of visiting the Google offices in India, and I've seen that free lunch for myself in action. I was just completely blown away by that experience. So for you to imagine how that is, just imagine a football field, and then imagine counters across the boundaries of that football field. So you, in India, had the North Indian food counter, the South Indian food counter, the Italian food counter, the continental food counter, the dessert food counter, the juice food counter, the healthy food counter, the XYZ food counter. It was like this spread that you've never seen before. And on one of those occasions, I was visiting the Google office in Delhi, meeting a friend of mine. I was standing in line with fellow Googlers for the Italian food counter. And one of the Googlers in front of me, he stepped outside of the line to check what the menu for the day was. And he read the menu and he went, "Fuck, man, we have pizza again?" And I stood there, stunned, looking at that individual, wondering, what has this person really done in his life to be complaining about the fact that he has to have pizza for 2 consecutive days of his life for free, made from the finest ingredients that the world has to offer, sitting in the finest offices that the world has? Like, how did this come to this point? This wasn't how it's supposed to be. Like, there's something broken in here right now. And I came up with this bullshit theory, which I think is true. The bullshit theory is the following. When Larry Page and Sergey Brin started Google, they were like, here's what we're going to do. We're going to create the biggest mindfuck experiment that the world has ever seen. Here's how it will work. We will get one of the smartest engineers in the world in a room. We'll call it a company at some point of time. And we'll give them the most complex technological problems to work on. But We'll also give them shit they didn't expect. We'll give them free food. We'll give them a fancy office. We'll give them the fastest internet possible. We'll give them the best infrastructure that's been seen by mankind. You can come whenever you want to come. You can sleep at work. You can dress whatever you want to dress as. You can get your pets to work. You can cycle to work. You can skateboard to work. You can use 20% of your time to do whatever you want to do in your life. And people over time will get addicted. They will get addicted. But Larry Page and Sergey Brin are also statisticians. So they're like, hey, what's the possibility that everyone will feel the same way? Well, non-zero, there has to be a percentage, however small it is, let's say 1%, that doesn't feel the same way. That doesn't get addicted to this. Instead, they feel like, hey, what the hell is happening to me? Why are they giving me all of these things when I'm not ready for it? So if you build a large enough company, let's say of 100,000 people, which is what Google is roundabout, then 1% or 1,000 people will show up every day, face the mirror, and say, I don't deserve this. I don't deserve anything of what this company does for me. I don't deserve this. This is a blessing. It's an opportunity. It's my way of making sure that I work as hard as I can to get to a point where I hopefully at some point in time, stand in front of the mirror and saying, you know what, I think you may have worked hard enough to get to this point to deserve this. But until then, I'm not going to stop. And those 1,000 people make the company move forward. Everyone else is filling in a seat. They're smart, nonetheless. They're doing kick-ass work, but they're just filling in a seat because they have gotten entitled. They feel entitled. They feel that the company owes them its time, its money, its energy. They feel that the world owes them something because they have gotten to a point where they deserve everything that they have got in life. But the truth is, none of us on this call, in our immediate and even far wide circle, deserves to be where we are in life. We're just lucky. We're just lucky that we were born in a family that took care of us, gave us food, shelter, education, and upbringing. We're lucky because of the country we were born in. We were lucky to the race that we were born to. Everything that has happened to us, to a large extent, is not something that we chose for ourselves. We were just born into that. And there are people who are outside of this fancy cocoon that we live in, who work far harder than we ever will, are far smarter than we are. And they'll never get to sit on the opportunities that we take for granted. And yet we will trick ourselves into believing that we deserve this. The day you get entitled, the day you feel that the world owes you something, is the day you stop growing. That's the day you stop growing. And that is never how an entrepreneur thinks. An entrepreneur does not wake up any fine day saying, oh, I have this fancy thing that I have started and the world now needs to bow in front of me. No one cares a fuck. No one cares about you. They only care about what you can do for them. And that is just intense hard work. It's just intense commitment. And it's never, ever going to change. Which brings me to the last and the final point. Every product, every service, every interaction that we are all a part of in today's world is designed for one thing and one thing alone: your comfort. Everything is designed for your comfort. You need a book, click. You need food, click. You need a cab, click. You need clothes, click. You need love, swipe right. Everything that you want at the speed of thought, available to you at your doorstep. So it tricks you into believing that the purpose of life is to make life comfortable. It tricks you into believing that the purpose of life is to make life comfortable. When ironically, the most successful men and women in the world, the ones that you look up to, the ones that you are inspired by, the ones that you would want to be, are on a daily basis, consciously choosing the path of maximum resistance. They're not choosing the comfortable path, my friend. They know very well that they're choosing something that makes them uncomfortable, that challenges them, that makes them face their fear, and yet they would do it because they know that if they were to, the downside is capped, but the upside can change their life. It can change their orbit. It can get them to become an entirely new person and a better version of who they are. And that's why they will play the odds. They will place their bets on this one thing. It baffles me how many people are optimizing to get their lives comfortable. And it is the most fascinating trap that the world lays out for you. It is truly the most fascinating trap that the world lays out for you. You look around yourself. You are in the country with the most opportunities that the world has to offer. You are in a great university amongst very smart people. Everything is laid out for you. And yet, you will chase that comfort. You're scared of public speaking. You have these several years of university life to get over that, to face your fears, to become someone that you want to become. And yet you will be comfortable and saying, I don't want to do that. You don't know how to reach out to strangers, send cold emails, approach them as strangers, and you will still not do that because you feel that that will make you uncomfortable. Every single thing that you have shied away from, that you've resisted to change in your life, is only something that would have made you uncomfortable. But you know that on the other side of that discomfort lies a person that you would want to be. And that is just the plain simple truth. Don't get comfortable. Don't get comfortable. When you combine these three things, spending time with people who are nothing like you, to broaden your horizon, to give you a fresh perspective about the world that you weren't aware of, not get entitled so that you're constantly working towards something that you don't think you deserve, but you know you have to earn through your work, through the trust that people have in you. And you do that in a manner that you never get comfortable. You don't get comfortable. You don't settle for something that comes easy for you. You settle for something that challenges you, knowing very well that if you were to get that done, you would change your life, change your orbit in a meaningful fashion. That is the entrepreneurial mindset. That is how entrepreneurs in their minds operate. They could be employees, they could be workers, they could be anyone, but what sets them apart is how they think. Entrepreneurship is not a profession, it's a mindset. And it starts with the most fundamental learning that I have had, which is in life, don't set goals and targets, set habits. Don't set goals and targets, set habits. Because the truth is we don't have any basis for setting goals and targets for ourselves in our lives. We don't know enough about ourselves to know how far can we go and what all can we achieve. The only thing that we can do is set habits. Habits that compound in ways that are so fascinating that it will take you beyond what your wildest imagination is. At the age of 24, me coming back from the US, dropping out of a fine education, resetting my life. If someone told me in 16 years from now, you would be doing what you're doing right now, I'm like, get the fuck out of here. Don't mock where I am in life right now. Don't patronize me. But that's what's happened. And it hasn't happened because I'm the smartest person I know. It hasn't happened because I worked the hardest that I ever will. None of that. This is not here because of who I am from a capability perspective. It's who I am because I am the most committed habit-forming individual that I know. That's it. That's just it. I will form everything into a habit if I know that it works for me. It isn't about showing up one fine day because you feel like it. It isn't about convenience. It is about making shit happen and showing up every day. Because the pro is just the amateur who showed up every day. That's just it. The pro is just the amateur who showed up every day. It's true for life. It's true for every discipline. It's true for how you would think about your life. And I would love for all of you to consider that as you wait for your winter break, have time to reflect upon things, get ready for a new phase of your life, and choose what is it that you would want to do with your life, and more importantly, what's the mindset with which you would want to take it forward. I've spoken for 42 minutes. I will stop here, pause. Thank you for being so patient. And I would love to have questions come my way. I do see some of them already in here, but let's get started.
Yeah, that was amazing. Thank you, Ankur. Andrew here has summarized your the 3 key lessons, and I hope the students will take them to heart. They're saying they've really, you've been their favorite speaker so far in the entire semester. So fantastic. There are some questions, and one of the questions is like, how do you form these habits? And when you say see yourself being comfortable in your life, when does the grind for you stop?
So let me address these, and thank you for that question. So when I say don't set goals, set habits instead, I'll first tell you what that means and then tell you the habits that have helped me.
Mm-hmm.
So let's say it's 1st of January, and upon us is the biggest resolution day of all times. And at some point of time, we'll all make these resolutions, and 99% of us will invariably fall into the trap of saying, oh, I want to get fit this year. I want to lose weight. I want to lose 10 pounds, 20 pounds, whatever the case is. And we will then set a target. I want to be lighter by this time, fitter by this time, and so on and so forth. And we'll show up at the gym. We'll show up at the gym the first day. We'll show up at the workout sessions the first week. And after that, as we all know what happens, we will just start drifting apart. And that's because when you set a goal or a target and you start working towards it, the first few days are going to show you no results, absolutely no results. You're not going to get fitter just because you show up one fine day at the gym. You're not going to get any better at writing if you just wrote one page one fine day. You're not going to get better at anything that you do just because you showed up one fine day. It's going to take intense commitment all through. And the first phase is going to be the most painful one, because that's when you do not have any sense of progress attached to it. So if you are working towards that goal and you don't see progress for a really long time, it's human mind that you would just say, you know what, quit. It's not working out. I'm not going to get there, and let's just quit. Or worse, what you will do is you will set a poorer target for yourself, something that you know is almost 100% achievable, and you will trick yourself into believing that that's the best that you could have done. Another way of thinking about this is, all right, I'm not going to set any goal on target. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm just going to set up a process, a mechanism, however it works for me. And there will be multiple ways it works for different people, that I will just work out every single day. That's it. I'm just going to spend 30 minutes in any physical activity that I can engage in, indulge in, and I know that I can be persistent with. It could be a sport. It could be showing up at the gym. It could be Zumba. It could be anything that fancies me. And I am just going to do that for 30 minutes every single day at a predetermined time. And that's the only thing that I'm going to make a commitment towards. When you do that, I can assure you that in 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, you'll be far, far, far fitter than you could have imagined or set a goal for yourself for, because there's no way that you could have predicted it. It's the same thing that I want to write a book at the end of the year, and you may or may not, or you may be a disaster. But if you just said, I'm going to write a page every day, just a small page every single day about anything that I feel. It could be chronicling my journey as a student. It could be my views on the startup industry. It could be my views on something else that's happening in the world. And lo and behold, by the end of the year, you will have a book in your hands, even if you did not choose to write one. That's how a habit would, I wouldn't say replace, but that's how a habit would take you to a goal or a target beyond what you had. Here are a few habits that have helped me a lot. In a disciplined fashion, just as I said in the first thing, I meet up with people who are nothing like me in a disciplined manner. So it's not that, oh, it's convenient and let me just show up. I would actually go out because I have this social profile on Twitter, on Instagram, on YouTube, and so on. I get a lot of inbounds, and I have the opportunity to connect with a lot of people who I wouldn't have otherwise. I'd be like, oh my God, this individual who's like 19 years of age is now, and this is what happened yesterday. That's a true story. I had a Zoom call with a 19-year-old who has realized that because this entire Web3 world and this entire blockchain technology is so new and so early in its days, that there are fundamental infrastructure problems that are happening. And he realized that security is going to be a big concern for all of them. So he has become, I kid you not, a freelance bug bounty guy, where all that he's doing is just going into Web3 apps and just finding vulnerabilities, writing to them, and he's earning way more than anyone of his age by a far, far measure. I was just fascinated by that conversation because he exposed me to a world that I wasn't exposed to as much. I know a fair bit about it, but not that side. And that's just one example of how you would get so many different dimensions without you making a goal or a target of it. I read every day. I write every day. I work out every day. I meet someone new once a week. I practice singing every day. I play tennis every day. And one habit, which is so crazy, but it's helped me so much in my life, is that I read all my emails. I read all my emails. I only respond to less than 5% of them, but I read all my emails. And it's crazy how many people do not read all their emails because they think that they can't respond. But when you start reading all your emails, you just get so much that you may not have ever planned for. Just some of the few habits that helped me. They sound so trivial that you'll almost laugh at them when you hear them. But I stand here as a living example of how these habits compound to completely transform the way that you would think about life.
So actually, Benny has an important question. And he says, what advice would you give for someone like him, soon to graduate, but still not sure what they want to do with their life?
Benny, the first thing is recognize that you're not alone. And I say this with absolute confidence of having met and on a daily basis meet several people in their 20s who are just as clueless as we all were, but the world will have you believe that you're the only loser in the world and everyone else is sorted out. It's only much later you realize everyone was in the same boat. So please start with that acknowledgement, because that's being true to yourself and fair to who you are. Second, the world's fundamentally changed, Benny. At least I come from a culture and a country where our parents worked really hard, but also spent a lot of their years in just resentment because they were never able to sit on the opportunities that we take for granted. Their only purpose in life was survival. And they just got a job and started working there for 40, 50 years before they retired. And that was just it. But the world's changed. It's completely changed. And the one core truth about the world now is that it's only going to change far faster than it ever has before, which means you're not going to have a career or a profession, Benny, for the next 40 years of your life. That's not going to happen. You are going to most certainly change your profession every 10 to 15 years, if not earlier. And the thing that you want to do while you're in your 20s is not try and settle. Don't try and settle. Don't try and finish your education as fast as possible, get a job as fast as possible, get married as fast as possible, have kids as fast as possible. Don't try and follow that social decorum of, let me just settle and get my life in order. Instead, my suggestion would be spend your entire decade of 20s in exploring as much as you can. That doesn't mean changing jobs, exploring as many fields as you can while having the financial security that you would have from a job. And your purpose and goal in your 20s is to find things that you're good at that make you happy. And most importantly, develop the art of becoming a student whenever you have to. You're not going to necessarily come back to university. In fact, there may not be any university left after 10, 20 years of any significance. What you would want to do instead is learn the art of becoming a student whenever you have to. And if you know that art, my friend, then you can become whosoever you want to within a stipulated period of time. By the time you're 30, your goal should be, I know exactly what I'm good at, what makes me happy. I know exactly how to learn something new. And I'm going to now in my 30s just double down on that one thing that I have recognized as my domain of expertise. And by the time I'm 40, I will either be so happy that it wouldn't feel like work, or I'll have something new that I can chase, which I'll be happy to chase, and I will start this journey all over again. Don't ever for a second blame yourself for not knowing what you want from life. Everyone's in the same boat. We all have gone through that same thing. It is going to be a journey, an adventure, not something that you'll be gifted or granted on one fine day.
Okay. Wow, there are lots of questions here. So figuring out what to ask you next. But just to understand, so you made these tough decisions, like you said, you decided to quit your PhD and come back. And then you decided to quit the job, the consulting job, and join a startup. And so how did you make those decisions? And there's also a financial implication, like you said. So is it possible to start a startup while also working like you did on a part-time basis? And, those are tough. Those are some reasons why people don't do startups, because, you have to earn, or you have to have some source of income while starting a startup.
Yeah. That's a good question, Anu. So I'll break the question into two parts. One is, how do I take tough decisions in life? And I have a mental model to do so. And the second one would be specific, which is it possible for you to start up while you have a job? Or how should one think about doing that? So the first one, taking tough decisions in life is a tough thing, understandably so. And I have a mental model that's really helped me. And it goes the following way. Whenever I have to take a tough decision in life, I almost invariably do know what is it that I want to do. Like, we always in our heart know what we want to do. We may just be scared of doing that because we think we'll fail. We think it won't work out. We think, what happens if it doesn't work out? So I'll ask myself this one question, which is, what's the worst thing that can happen if I do decide to do what I want to do? What's the worst thing that can happen if I do decide to do what I want to do? And this is not so much of a probabilistic answer. So I'm not trying to figure out the probability of that worst thing happening. I'm actually asking, what is the worst thing that will happen if you do decide to do what you want to do? So let's say you want to start your own after university, and you're split between, should I sit for a job? Should I go for a startup right away? What do I want to do? In your heart, you want to start up. So you go through that and you ask yourself, what's the worst thing that'll happen? And the worst thing that'll happen is that the startup will not work out and you'll have to shut down. That, I would imagine, is the worst thing to happen. And then I would close my eyes and vividly imagine that worst case scenario unfolding in front of me. I would vividly imagine me standing in front of my employees and telling them, you know what, we tried our best, but it's come to whatever it has. We're shutting down. You don't have a job anymore. I'm so sorry that it came to this. We did our best and it's all on me. But from tomorrow onwards, you're free and I have nothing more to offer. And it'll be a horrible experience. And then you'll go back and you'll perhaps tell your friends and your family about that decision. Then that evening you're at a friend's party and people are like, hey, how's that startup of yours coming along? And you'll be, I had to shut it down. I shut it down this morning. So you would close your eyes and vividly imagine that. The reason why you're doing that is our brains are fascinating in the sense that they do not distinguish reality from imagination, which is why so often when we wake up from a dream, we feel that we're still in the dream, or we question whether we're in the real world. So when you're closing your eyes and you're vividly imagining something, your body is beginning to react the same way that it would if it were to happen in real life. And at that point of time, you ask this really hard question. Am I going to be okay? Socially, financially, physically, mentally, emotionally, psychologically, am I going to be okay? And you go about digging deep into that answer. How is it that I can make myself okay on all these fronts? The minute you have a response to that, even if that response is somewhat fragile or not convincing, you will have far more courage to take that decision than you ever had. Because what you've essentially done is the purest form of a psychological hack. You have tricked your brain into believing that you have a response to the fear that it's trying to generate in your mind. Because that's the purpose of the brain. The brain is just out there to warn you of danger ahead. And it's trying to do that by making you scared of the decision you want to take. But the minute you have a solution or a response to anything that were to happen, which you classify as the worst case, your brains were like, oh, awesome. My job's done here. This person seems in control. I can leave the person to their job. And that works. It's a simple mental model, but works powerfully. To the second question that Anu asked, I am actually very pragmatic, and I feel that it's bullshit advice when people are like, oh, why don't you follow your passion and quit your job and do whatever it is that one you do? That's horrible advice because that disregards the practical implications of how one would have to go about that. My suggestion is the following. It's a 3-step process. Step 1, stay in your job. Stay in your job because that's financial stability. It's financial stability that is important in today's world. As long as it doesn't physically and mentally harm you in any way, stay in your job and do the best that you need to just be there diligently. You don't have to aim for the Employee of the Month award and the quarter and the year, but just stay there so that you are meeting expectations the way that they have defined. And then step 2, cull out whatever time you can, as much as for yourself, your nights, your weekends, to work on your startup. And you would do that. It will be slower. It will be contrarian to the Silicon Valley view of go big or go home. But in my opinion, that is a very, very effective way of doing that. And then step 3, you get that to a point where either of two things happen. You actually recognize that your startup idea did not hold as much merit, and thankfully, you've gone through that journey to recognize it yourself. What you thought was a great idea isn't showing as much love from your customers, or you get far more conviction in what your beliefs were, where you see, oh my God, this is exactly unfolding the way that I imagined it to me. Now I feel that I have the courage to either go and raise money or to start running it from a bootstrap profitable perspective, or I have enough savings that I can wait through for the next 6 months, but I'm certain in those next 6 months, this will get to a certain size and scale where it will attract capital. Whichever way it is, you need to form that conviction. Don't be foolish to leave, because most startups die not because of lack of execution, but just because there is a mismatch in what the opportunity is at play and what the founder thought was the market potential. It just doesn't match. Far lesser, far bigger. So you are either underwhelmed or overwhelmed, and that's why it fails.
Wow, you have an amazing knack. It's exactly 7 o'clock.
Ended.
I mean, there are lots of other questions, and but I think we should not keep you for longer. But you've shared some really amazing insights with us this evening, and that's what everybody is saying here. The perspectives you've shared are so inspiring, and you're such an inspiring, amazing speaker, Ankur. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you to Varenya for inviting you. And thank you for accepting the invitation. We're really grateful to you for joining and for all these awesome, all the advice that you've shared with the students. And the last point is also really, really valuable, because our students, they tend to do what you're saying, be part-time entrepreneurs very often, And so I'm glad that you think that's a good idea.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Thanks for having me. All the best to everyone. Season's greetings, and have a wonderful holiday season ahead. All the best for the end of the semester as well. And at large, just all the best with everything that you do in life. If there's any way that I can help, please look me up. I'm on Twitter at my last name, Warikoo, Warikoo. So just at Twitter, my DMs are always open, and that'll be the best destination for me to connect with you. And I hope to do that. Thanks, Varenya, for having me. Thanks, Anu, for having me. Thank you, everyone, for all your attention.
Thank you so much.
All the best. Bye-bye. Thank you, Dan. Bye-bye.